welcome to the stage Vice President of K-12, Leilani Brown.
Hi, good morning. So you didn't need to see that again, but we can play it at the end if you want to. Good morning, everybody. Oh, I think we could do better than that. We're at least 2 hours behind from wherever I think I am. Good morning. All right, that's so much better. I'm really thrilled to be here with you today. I'm going to rely a little bit on my notes, but my name is Leilani Brown. I'm Senior Vice President of Strategic Partnerships and External Engagement with K-12. And my role and that of my team is to work with business and industry to set up workplace experiences for our students. In this work, I have the opportunity to meet a lot of people. Business leaders, industry leaders, business owners, entrepreneurs. I've met people of very little means, and I've met people of a lot of means. I've had conversations with thousandaires, millionaires, and even a couple of billionaires. In fact, I spoke with and was in conversation with a billionaire last week. Many of them are parents, like I'm a parent. And I know these two things to be true. Parents have this in common. One, almost every single parent wants to create a set of opportunities for their children that are greater than the opportunities that they themselves had. And I think that that's universally true. The other thing that I've learned in these conversations, though, is that while parents are generally happy and proud of their students for graduating from high school, and certainly proud when and if they graduate from college, they are over the moon when they get a job. I hear a lot of chuckles, and sometimes when I tell that story, which is the truth, I hear an amen. And I think that that is true because it is a signal that something around self-sufficiency and participation has gone right and gone well. And that's what we intend to do with our program. Okay, so what I have here is what we see as the formula for how partnership can work, at least from a K-12 perspective. And if you're not familiar with K-12, we are the largest and leading online learning company serving the K-12 population in the country. We've been in business for about 19 years. I've been with the company for about a year. I have some other colleagues in the audience, if you could just raise your hands, but we're all part of a career readiness team. Don't be shy. Hi, I never see you. But what we know is that there's actually a formula for collaboration, which some of our other partners were talking about, and that is business, education, and legislation. And as I bring that up, I'm going to point your attention to the race for company headquarters that often occurs at the state level. We can think about Amazon in our most recent history. Certainly, there are other examples in and around South Carolina. For example, I remember when Boeing was looking for a new state home. State legislatures will come together and basically make a marketing pitch. And part of the value proposition is that we have the talent, or we are going to incubate the talent in order to make that possible. So please locate your business here. Bring jobs into my state. And so this quote I thought was very, very important. And it comes from the McKinsey Future of Work study. That's going to be a turn of phrase that I will try not to repeat, because we're going to repeat that a lot today. But in bold here, in all cases, the local mayor, government, business, and other community leaders worked together. And so we see this as a very necessary collaboration. Okay. So I want to get at some of the talent gap numbers and what this really means, because we talk about the future of work, but let me make it real, because what we are trying to do is really mitigate that and get on top of it in advance. Last year, when we started having these conversations about career readiness education for high school students and even middle school students, we started to really focus in on the fact that by the year 2020, which is upon us, I think we have about 70 days until the next decade, that there would be 55 million new jobs created. And that's really, really good news. And of those jobs, 16 million of those jobs would be what we consider new-collar jobs. Jobs that require a high school diploma and some credentialing and certification, but not necessarily a college degree. And so that was great news on the horizon from an opportunity standpoint, but there was still a deficit with respect to some of the skilled workers. What some of the reports point out, and there's a suggested reading list in the app, and this is from a Korn Ferry report in 2018, that we are seeing record numbers of job openings. So we had 6 million job openings last year, every single month. That is a record number. We have a high-skilled worker deficit of 6.5 million people, and that's in this country. They surveyed 5 geographies, and the United States was furthest behind. And what does this really mean? It means lost productivity and lost revenue to companies and businesses. And so this really becomes an economic development imperative and a workforce development imperative. $1.7 trillion in unrealized revenue as the result of not being able to fill those jobs. So we don't always want to talk in the abstract. We want to talk about what the impacts are. And this is another study, the McKinsey Future of Work study that was published in July of 2019. And we started saying, who's this impact? What are the impacts and who does it really affect? Well, 14.7 million young workers as categorized between 18 and 34. So I was like, okay, I'm not young anymore. Maybe I'm sort of protected, right? Or workers over the age of 50. I'm getting perilously close to 50. So that could affect me and a lot of others in the room. Latinos and African Americans are going to be disproportionately affected to the tune of 11.9 million jobs. So this is data that takes us through the year 2030 and looks at the economic impacts and the workforce development impacts of automation and artificial intelligence. These groups, by and large, are not participating in the job creation, in those 50 million jobs that are being created. But it's also here and now. This is not something that economists talk about only. This is something that we're talking about in our every single day. Amazon is spending $700 million to retrain a third of its workforce. And I had an opportunity to talk to an Amazon executive, and they said, we're not really focused on the recruitment of new talent, although that's important to us, okay? But what we want to do is we want to take our workforce that exists in our warehouse, where those jobs are going to be automated, and do the right thing and retrain them for other jobs within our organization, which I think is fantastic. If there's anybody here at Amazon, someone is telling your story in a powerful way. At the same time, they have 30,000 open jobs right now. These are ripped from the headlines. The industry associations, whether it's the National Association of Manufacturers, which is the title, the slide that I have up here, I'll go back, or I was at a conference a couple of weeks ago of agribusiness leaders. They recognize they too have a challenge. And so they're investing significant dollars around educating the workforce and the potential workforce to attract new talent to their field. So last week I was talking, and I just mentioned really quickly that I had the opportunity to speak with a billionaire. And that billionaire was Robert Smith. He's the gentleman who's the founder, CEO, private equity founder and CEO of Vista Equity Partners. He's also the gentleman and the great philanthropist that gave $40 million to eradicate the student debt at Morehouse. So I had a conversation with him. I know, that's right? That's great. Not a lot of $40 million gifts out there, but I'm going to go back to us, while we celebrate that, I want to go back to the college debt challenge and what that really, really means. So here's what he shared in an unrelated conversation. He said, the biggest issue facing me in my business is talent and people. I can't find enough to fill the need. We have to develop people, practices, and on-ramps at every level. So here you have a private equity firm, and they have a portfolio of holdings that employ 60,000 people, and they have set up levels of education and retraining to prepare for their own workforce crisis in order to realize that productivity. So I think that's important, but I'm going to come back to Robert Smith. We have 3 critical gaps around that are challenging employers. So we talked about talent gap, we talked about skills gap. I think that what we are doing at K-12 is we're addressing the interest gap. Because quite frankly, and we all know this, one of the most unfair questions that we can ask young people is what you want to be when you grow up, when they haven't seen all of the possibilities. Because you cannot be what you cannot see. By educating them early and providing that early access and exposure, we can address some of that interest gap and give them a more informed point of view, whether they pursue college to career or high school to career or some kind of learn and earn opportunity. So what are we doing? At K-12, as you know, we've been primarily focused on the K through 12 population and a traditional high school education as well, and leveraging technology to do that and to facilitate, empower homeschooling. But in the last year or so, and probably in the last 2 years or so, excuse me, we have been very focused on our fast-growing division, Destinations Career Academy. And it's a nationwide network of schools and programs designed to provide college and career readiness to students, whether they are college-bound, career-bound, or both. And what we recognize, and this is a chart that's outdated as of this morning because we're growing rapidly, what we recognize is that one size does not fit all, and that largely some of our high school programs, not all of them, but some of our high school programs are preparing students for the future of work based on a high school experience that is 30, 40, 50,000 years old. And that's unfair. Because the truth is that we can't prepare our students for the future of work if we're using the models of old. Who are our high school students today? I know you know them. We love them. We ask them to pick up their laundry off of the floor. I'm sorry, that's just me. But they're bright, they're brilliant, and they're very capable. But these are some of the things that we deliberately try to put into our program. We know that they're innovators and they're builders and doers. And left to their own devices, actually, they can sometimes outthink us, and most times outthink us. I'm looking at my colleague, Dr. Pat Michelle, in the audience, and I know that he agrees. Leave them alone. They're digital natives. And so we have to embrace the way in which they learn and leverage technology to learn, and make them responsible users of technology. I hope that most of you will have the opportunity to meet my colleague and friend, Casey Welch, who's the founder and CEO of Tallo, and I think he'll be speaking to the group tomorrow. But I think that their Tallo platform, for example, which is a fast-growing digital network, will give them their first responsible online digital footprint. They're multicultural. We have a generation now between the ages of 16 and 24 that is a majority person of color population in this country. So it's not a matter of getting ready. It's a matter of being ready. They're do-gooders. And no matter their political affiliation, almost every young person wants to be connected to something greater than themselves. And they're independent learners and self-motivated. They will curate learning in a way that we were never taught. Or some of us were never taught. One of the things that I love about interacting with high school students, and I don't get to do it often, but when I do, I lean into it, is really, really understand that they have a sense of wonder. The things that we take for granted about the way in which we work still provide them a sense of wonder and astonishment even. Interacting with them this summer in the video that you saw and bringing them into the workplace really opened up their eyes to their own possibilities. And I would say that the other thing that we've learned about partnering with businesses, and you saw some of our colleagues at Salesforce and Cummins, is the level of empowerment the employee has when they're interacting with the student. And we had one man who told the story of his father being a career Cummins engineer, and how he, in his own career, had outpaced his own father's trajectory and done better at the same company. And he told this wonderful story about his career. And the student asked him, he says, what are you most proud of? What do you think your father gave you? And he teared up, and he said, my father gave me my work ethic. And I hope that I'm sharing that with you guys. That was a big moment for us. We like to think of the workplace being our classroom. Here's some example of some of our partners. Certainly the obvious, corporations and businesses. We want to work with corporations and businesses. If you're in this room, we want to partner with you to provide workplace experiences for our students. But we also are working with staffing companies or human capital companies that really are looking at jobs from a transactional and placement perspective. Those are also sample partners. Industry associations. So I mentioned the National Association of Manufacturers. If we can be involved with industry associations to provide greater opportunity awareness to those students, I think that that's also very important. Workforce development boards, and I'll talk about that, and I appreciate the gentlemen who were pointing that out before. Space and locations, just getting students into a workspace and a work environment and letting them collaborate around some of our project-based opportunities in your workspace. That's also a wonderful collaboration and partnership for us. And then certainly nonprofit organizations. Well, that's not the end. I'm going to back up. I'll stop there. The state of Indiana was a great partner for us. This summer, we worked with them to help secure partners and also provide some workplace experiences for our students. I'll share with you by telling the story what made them a great partner. Number one, they had shared values. At the beginning of this talk, I talked about business legislation and education coming together in partnership. What's interesting about the state of Indiana is Governor Holcomb actually issued a goal for the state, and that's by the year 2030, that 60% of the adult population would have some type of post-high school credential. And so that laid the perfect backdrop for this type of program. So I had the opportunity to meet with the Commissioner of Workforce Development at the state level, and he said, this sounds like a great partner. Let's make sure that we make something happen. And so over time, we did. They also had some kind of strategic fit, so it fit in with their goals and objectives. And they're a well-known partner, actually, in terms of workforce development for young people. And I used to say easy activation. There's no easy activation. But a reasonable activation means that there's not a lot of operational lift on the part of you as the partner, and it's also something that we know we can deliver on, because these are early stage pilots for us. Some of our experiences might include job shadowing, which is just as simple as letting a young person come into the workplace and have some exposure to your organization, follow you around for a half a day or a couple of hours or even a full hour. Mentorship and guidance. This can be done virtually or in person, and that also does wonders for our young people to have some experience and exposure to some of the employees in your company. Internships. There are companies that do high school internships, and if you know of one or if you are one, we want to hear from you. Those same companies are companies that allow some type of or facilitate some type of direct to high school recruiting, and those do exist as well. Curriculum and training, very, very important. One of the things that we pride ourselves is building a program that is going to produce curriculum and produce graduates who are industry recent and industry relevant. And we want to make sure that we have industry practitioners teaching and exposed to our students. Advisory groups are also important in that. As we build out our curriculum so that it's current, we want to stay ahead of the curve. And then finally, jobs and recruiting, because ultimately what we're looking to do is place students into jobs that are meaningful long-term careers. How do we all win when we do this? Well, obviously on the partner side, you have access very early around an early trained and ambitious workforce, and likely that they have been trained around some of those so-called soft skills, or what we like to consider professional skills, because we know that our students are capable, but we need them to be sticky, and sticky in the sense of being able to retain them and be productive in our workplaces. And then I'll end with the idea that it's providing access to students from a much more broad array and background from that standpoint. When we start talking about our reach into rural communities, communities of color, communities where students are coming from military families, that's also part of our background. We believe that the work we're doing is transformational insofar as we have an ability to affect public education at scale in a way that others cannot. Okay, one more thing, and I want to get back to this because I did mention the Robert Smith gift, which we all applauded, and I think we should continue to applaud. But I want to anchor us in this notion, because I don't want to suggest that what we are doing is saying that kids should not go to college. That's not at all what I'm suggesting. I went to college. My son will likely go to college, and I think it's a great option for a lot of young people. And in fact, college still has, on average, a 14% ROI. But I want to give you this example by doing some rough math based on the Robert Smith gift, which was incredibly generous. So Robert Smith, if you're not familiar, he made a speech, a graduation speech, when he made in 2019 at Morehouse College. Morehouse is a historically black college and university, educating African-American men, and they've received a lot of donations over the year. But this was a remarkable gift to the tune of $40 million. Of the 400 graduates, there were 380 with student loans. So I said, well, let me start thinking about what that really means. So $40 million for 380 graduates is roughly $105,000 per student in student debt to graduate from college. And then let's think about what the average first-year salary is coming out of college. The average first-year salary coming out of college is actually $50,000 a year. And I started to say to myself, well, how does that work? Let's say they all get a job, because life really is that fair. And they all get a job making the average salary, and let's say they all stay in Atlanta. The amortization on the roughly $105,000 over a 10-year period is $1,100 a month student loan payment. The take-home pay on $50,000 is $3,200 a month. That math doesn't work. With $2,000 roughly left over to move through your first few months or years out of college, that, I would argue, ladies and gentlemen, is not a running start. That's a hobbled start. Or another option might be for a young person to come out with an informed point of view about what they want to do. Pursue a bachelor's degree or an associate's degree while they work. And at 21, be earning $50,000 a year or more and have a degree that may be debt-free. That, to me, is a running start. What comes behind that, though, is destigmatizing the idea that you have failed if you have gone from high school to career. And that's work that we all need to do in partnership. So again, I wanted to put that in there, not to say that college is not still a great opportunity for a lot of people, but it may not work at the expense of enormous college debt. And we have $1.9 million in existing college debt and growing. And a $40 million gift is not going to cut it. You could clap for that. Thank you. Okay, so what can we do and what is our ask? Help us tell the story. And part of telling that story is destigmatizing different pathways towards workforce participation, because that's what we're talking about. College is not a destination. It's not a final destination. It is a throughway to workforce participation. Help tell the story about career readiness education as early as middle school and high school. Become a partner. I am here. I have several colleagues who are here who are eager to talk to you about being a partner with us in any number of our states. And some of that partnering and showing up and workplace experience can also be virtual. Our goal is to do this in a way that where there's very little operational lift, but huge payoff for our student. And then finally, stay in tune and stay in touch with us, and we will communicate back through this conference for Job Shadow Week 2020. Last year, we had our first inaugural thought leadership effort of Job Shadow Week, and it was very successful. We had a lot of interest, and we're looking for companies across the country to welcome high school students into their organizations the week of July 13th, 2020, and provide them some significant exposure to the world of work and help them see their own possibilities. And so stay tuned. We will update our website with more information about Job Shadow Week, but we encourage you to be a partner and participate as well. And that's it. Thank you so much.